In this video, I tell you everything I have learned about The Last Jedi from Star Wars Celebration. This includes what I learned in the panel, what I learned from the trailer, and what I learned from a secret source that I met here in Orlando. Okay, so right off the bat, I want to kind of apologize because I know that I talked a lot about doing an extensive amount of coverage here at Orlando, and for a variety of different reasons that I'm not going to quite get into in this video, it just hasn't happened. Now, I am supposed to do a lot of coverage tomorrow, so I'm hoping to give you guys a ton of cool stuff tomorrow, give you a little bit more of an experience with this. Please, if you really want like the in the moment stuff, follow me on Instagram. I've been doing a lot of cool stuff and footage from the floor on Instagram. But having said that, that's neither here nor there. I wanted to do one video today before I went to bed and got ready for the Rebels panel tomorrow. And it's a no-brainer. It's obviously about The Last Jedi. So I want to talk about in depth about everything that I know about the movie from the panel, the little hints that happened, you know what I mean? I feel like I'm pretty good at reading people. And also the trailer itself, which I have watched probably over 20 times now. And what I learned from a secret source. I've been talking about this a little bit on social media, but I met someone that worked on The Last Jedi. And this person showed me some things and told me some things, and then found out that I was a YouTuber, and then we had a long discussion about what I could and couldn't say. So very cool stuff. That'll be at the end of the video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. I'm going to get into all the craziness that I learned from my secret source. But anyways, let's talk about right away the trailer. Now, I'm not going to go through panel by panel and break it down. I thought about doing that, but the honest to God truth is that I'm going to do breakdowns of separate sections within this trailer, because there's so much that's shown and so much to speculate on about what is shown that I'll probably pick out little segments of the trailer and dissect them individually with some kind of context to them as I move closer to episode 8, as we all move closer to episode 8. So that's what I want to do. I am going to briefly go over some things that we saw in the trailer and some things that we didn't see in the trailer, which are very interesting to me personally. So I want to start by pointing out this concept that we got that I think is the new way of doing things at Lucasfilm, and this is that we got answers. Make no mistake about it, guys. We got some answers in this trailer, but we got the kind of answers that actually give us more questions. This is very much what happened in Episode 7. We got a bunch of answers, but we really came out of it with more questions, and I think that is kind of a nice style that Lucasfilm has adopted for Star Wars, and this trailer was no different. My macro thoughts on the trailer itself is that it was a Rian Johnson trailer. It just really felt like a Rian Johnson movie to me. Just the motifs, the way things were shot, the colors, and the way that it was narrated and cut. I was like, man, this is really, really cool. And I'm actually going to do a video later on about how important I think Rian Johnson is going to become to this franchise based on some things that Kathleen Kennedy said in the Last Jedi panel. I literally was like, whoa, did you just say what I think you said? But look for that video in the future. As far as the trailer itself, I think that when you first see Rey's hand on the ground, I think that is her coming out, possibly of a cave, it kind of looks like, or maybe even the room where those books and the tree are, or whatever. But essentially, she is breathing the same way that she did after she had the Force vision. So I think that this is the continuation of her Force vision, something that we knew was going to happen. If you follow some of these places like MakingStarWars.net or whatever, they've been talking about this for a while. It was a story I think I broke a couple months ago about possibly getting more information, more stuff from that vision, a continuation of the vision, which actually comes up later in the trailer, I believe, too. But so I think that that's pretty cool. The idea of Grey is introduced more or less right away. And this has to do with Rey's training. And we see that she is being told to breathe and reach out and meditate. And then we are shown some images that correspond with what she is seeing in her Force vision, which is really cool. It's a nice narrative tool. So she talks about the light, and we see Leia. And, I look, from everything I've seen, just not to sidetrack about from Celebration in general, from everything that I have seen, I think Carrie Fisher put in a hell of a performance for this movie. I think we're all going to be really blown away. It's going to break our hearts kind of a little bit too, right? But I think that at the end of the day, look, before she died, I made the statement that I thought she was really bad in The Force Awakens. I'm going to stand by that statement. I do not think she was good in that movie at all, for probably a number of different reasons. But from what I have gathered from my source and the things that I've seen, I truly believe that Rian Johnson was able to pull a great performance out of her. Look, this Rian Johnson dude, I'm about to start worshiping at the altar of Rian Johnson. I mean, some of the things that he did that night, we're all waiting in line. He came out for 4 hours and mingled with people. It was crazy. Really cool dude, really humble, and just the little details and his love of Star Wars and things. Man, I'm going to start worshiping at the altar of this guy big time, especially if he pulled out that kind of a performance from Carrie Fisher before she passed, which I really do believe that she did. Then we go to what she sees, or what we see when she is looking at the darkness, okay? And this is a very interesting shot. This is Kylo Ren's helmet shattered in an Imperial or First Order base of some kind, or room, and it is smoking. The mask is smoking. It is surrounded by glass. So what I think has happened here is that Kylo Ren has smashed his own mask, perhaps out of anger. It would be really cool if he was feeling the sentiment that his father expressed right before he killed him, which was like, take off that mask, you don't need it, which would be kind of interesting. I don't know if that's going to tie in or not. I think at the end of the day that Kylo's journey is going to be very integral to these movies and the future saga films. And I'll touch on this later in the video when I talk about what I learned from my source. But I think that Kylo was always meant to be the main character of this thing. And I don't think Rey really was. In fact, I know she wasn't. She was definitely a part of it, but she was not going to be the be-all end-all of this saga the way that she has become. And a lot of that has to do with Daisy Ridley. She's super talented, really just did great things with this character. I absolutely love the Rey character, and Daisy, by the way. If you're watching Daisy, you can totally marry me. I will drop everything that I have going on right now, and we'll make that happen. But in all seriousness, she's awesome. But the thing is, the saga films, and this is something Carrie Hart said on the special features for Rogue One, the saga films are about the Skywalker family. That is what makes a saga film a saga film. So these are saga films, right? Well, Luke, obviously is a Skywalker, but who else is a Skywalker? Well, it's Ben Skywalker. And the thing is, guys, for all of you that call him Ben Solo, in The Force Awakens, at least to my knowledge, he's never referred to as Ben Solo, ever. They call him Ben. They say that it's their son. Snoke says that his father is Han Solo, like that. But he never really refers to him as Ben Solo. Nobody does. So he's just as much Ben Skywalker as he is Ben Solo. So my point being that Kylo, in his emotional journey, is actually the thread of the saga films. It's the through line of the saga films. And think of it like this, right? If Star Wars is super cyclical, which it is, if you have one trilogy about the triumph of a member in that family, Luke, then you tell what happened before that, which was the downfall of a member of that family, which was Anakin. Would it not make sense to, in your next saga films, do the downfall again, or perhaps both, the downfall and redemption of a character from that family, from the Skywalker family? That's what makes it saga films, and that's what makes it, the Star Wars lore. So interesting that we saw so little of him. Also, he wasn't on the panel. And even though they talked about how Oscar Isaac couldn't be there, and they talked about certain people that couldn't be there, he was never mentioned. Adam Driver was never mentioned. There was no explanation given as to why he was not there. And that, to me, is really telling. Sometimes it's not about what you are told. It is about what you are not told. And context is really important. I find it fascinating that his story wasn't delved more into in not only the trailer, but in the panel itself. I can't believe there wasn't more time spent talking about Adam Driver and explaining where the hell he was. I find that very interesting. I think that this is because a large part of this movie is about Kylo's journey. Now, we heard the interview that He gave many months ago where he's talking about how it's a character journey. It's a journey that he is on, retracing steps of the great family members that came before him. And we know that we're going to Tatooine, Endor, and Vader's castle in the future of the saga films. Maybe not all in 8, but in 8 and 9, we are definitely revisiting Endor. We are definitely revisiting Mustafar. And we are definitely revisiting Tatooine. And I think that trying to better understand his grandfather's actual path and journey is going to take Kylo Ren around, and I think that some of the revelations that he discovers is going to make him want to destroy that mask. So I don't think that Kylo's going to be redeemed in this movie. I think he is still the bad guy for sure, but I think that he is going to struggle more with where he is at with the Force and where he is at in the sense of morality, and I think that that's going to be some pretty compelling stuff. So I thought that was a key thing I wanted to talk about and bring up, is like, where the hell's Kylo at in this panel and in this trailer? Very interesting. But that is the dark, right? And then we go to the balance. Now this is where it gets really crazy. So this shot right here that I'm going to show you guys, a lot of people are speculating this is the Force tree, and we kind of knew this Force tree was going to show up again. It doesn't really make sense for them to talk about this sort of a thing in the Shattered Empire series and then never bring it up again. There was also, supposed set photos of it being brought onto Octu and different things like that. So we definitely have this Force tree. I really do believe this is the Force tree, and I believe that these are books, so to speak, perhaps even journals of the wills, but they're definitely ancient Force knowledge, ancient Jedi knowledge. This whole thing, this is where it gets really weird. And obviously I'm going to talk about Luke Skywalker and the line that he says. But I'll just say this. I find it very interesting that they put up that Jedi symbol and talk about balance, and then Luke says it's so much bigger than that. That's really compelling stuff, man. He's seeing this wider view. I think that he's going to literally make the argument that, like, it's like a Zen master thing. Why didn't he get involved when, Han was in trouble? Why didn't he come back as Snoke was building this thing? I think it's because to him, it's so much bigger than that. The Force, the Jedi, everything, his legacy, his father's legacy is so much bigger than that. And he had to be impartial, and he had to sit there. Weirdly. We also get a shot in the trailer of R2 and Luke, and I think this is the continuation we've been looking for from the Force vision, right? So very intriguing stuff. I believe that this will take place either right before or right after Luke touches R2, the stuff that we saw way back when for The Force Awakens. I think this is a continuation of that. But I do want to mention that this next shot with Captain Phasma is actually not, as far as I am aware of, not in the same scene. So this is not Captain Phasma crushing the Jedi Temple or whatever is going on there with Luke. These are separate scenes meant to be cut together to give us sort of a crazy idea of narration, right? It's a story thing. It just looked cool, basically. So I think that is pretty interesting. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about, and I think that it's the big button topic, right, is the idea of Luke Skywalker saying that the only truth that he knows is that the time of the Jedi has to end. So what does that mean? Well, it could mean a number of different things. It could mean that the Jedi as it is known, the Jedi Order as it is practiced currently, needs to be over. It could also mean that this dogmatic dedication to the light side simply needs to be over. We've been introduced with all sorts of ancillary content that talks about the middle ground, talks about the gray path of the Jedi. This was something that was big in the EU. There's something that George Lucas, by the way, never was into. Never. He wanted to do strict moral stories, black hat, white hat stories. Just very put the morality right in front of people's faces. That's what he wanted to do. And Lucasfilm has chosen to take a more ambiguous approach to the morality. What's interesting, though, is I think they will circle back to the conclusion that George had. I think that's the big hook. I think it's going to go right back into that idea of good and bad. But perhaps with a more refined, as people have been quoting that that Journal of the Wills quote from the novel of The Force Awakens, which I've talked about before. You trust me, a lot of people are going to be talking about this for a long time until Last Jedi comes out. But through that refined Jedi sight, right, that's mentioned in that quote. So I think that what is going on with Luke saying that is that the Jedi were wrong. The idea that you have to be on this one side and reject all these other things is like a dogmatic extension. It's like that game of telephone effect, which has happened to a lot of religions in the actual world. Really cool stuff. But this spiritual truth that was so simple and just kind of told in stories, when written down and handed down to generation after generation, it took on different forms. It took on different ways of being used, whether by leaders or the disenfranchised. It was, I don't want to say bastardized, but it was changed, right? It was changed, and not for the good. It's not the purest teaching. So we know that right away after the Battle of Endor, Luke is looking for ancient Jedi knowledge. This is a guy who defeated the Sith through attachment. And I've talked about this before, but he left Yoda's training. He meditated on Tatooine. He built his own lightsaber, and then he beat his father through attachment. He beat the Emperor through attachment. He broke away from the narrow, dog-minded view of the Jedi, and that is how he won. So you have to imagine that he was looking to understand that in himself, and so that is the journey that I think he is on in this movie. That is what he means by the Jedi's time is over. And that's all I want to talk about that for now. I will do more videos on that. Please feel free to ask me more questions in the comment section. But let's get into the juicy stuff. Let's talk about what my source told me at Star Wars Celebration. Okay, so this is kind of a cool thing that happened, okay? So essentially, I meet this person that worked on The Last Jedi, has actually worked on a lot of different films, obviously in London. And we started talking about things, and the person told me a bunch of stuff, and then I told them I had a YouTube channel, and they were basically like, no! And we, had this big talk about what I could and couldn't say and all this stuff. And I found it really interesting. This person, I'm going to be careful because there's some things I just don't want to say to get this person in trouble, but I know a lot about The Last Jedi, and I want to talk to you about some of the things that I learned from the person. So let's get right into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is Laura Dern. Apparently Laura Dern is actually going to be an admiral in the movie, and she has purple hair, which is really interesting. I forget the name of the admiral, and I actually don't remember because I was so exhausted, whether it was actually for the Resistance or whether or not it was for the First Order. I think she works for the Resistance, though. So that is kind of intriguing, right? I also learned that Snoke actually wears this weird gold cloak. Now, some people have been talking about this online or whatever, but I have it on very good authority that, yes, Snoke does indeed wear this elaborate gold cloak, the velvet stash, and he has this big black pop ring, like one of those big nasty rings that's all black and apparently is a black kyber crystal. Very, very interesting, right? So he's fancy. That's kind of cool. By the way, we don't see him in the trailer. Why do you think that is? Also the Ezra Bridger Benicio del Toro rumor, totally wrong. It's not true, and it breaks my heart, but it's just simply not true. He is connected to that casino planet, which is pretty cool. Now let's talk about Ahch-To for a second. My source was explaining to me that the idea that those birds and the wildlife that's on Ahch-To are the same birds that are in Rebels. I forget what the name of those things are. Those little force owls or whatever. It's just simply not true. Those are not the force owls. However, I do believe that the whole planet of Ahch-To is in balance with the force, much like the Bendu. And I think that when Luke first is like engaged with Rey, he's actually not going to want to train her, and he's going to tell her to leave. And I think she's going to refuse to leave, and he's going to tell her the planet's going to force you to leave. It doesn't like that you're here. And it reminds me in Rebels when Kanan first shows up to the Bendu, and the Bendu says, "Your presence here is like a violent storm," explaining that someone so Jedi, someone so light side, is just as bad and disorienting for people that are truly in the middle as people that are dark side. So her presence there, I think, because she's so purely good and wants all this stuff, is violent to the planet. It's hostile to them. It threatens. And what also is interesting is we're pretty damn sure that Kylo and the First Order shows up to Ahch-To and tries to kill Luke and Rey. So in some ways the planet's correct. It's like, look, your presence here, no bueno. There's been these rumors that she gets in a fight with a sea monster, which could be really dope. That could be those scenes where she's outside the Falcon and it's raining and then she's looking out at the ocean and it's very ominous in the clouds and whatnot. So very, very cool stuff. But I essentially just wanted to talk about Ahch-To just a little bit. Let me see. Is there anything else I want to go into? I don't know, but you guys can definitely feel free to ask me questions in the comment sections, or if I'm doing live stuff on either Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, check that stuff out and feel free to ask me questions. I will answer what I can. But The Last Jedi is going to be really cool, man. I'm excited. This is a different path for Star Wars. Star Wars is taking on a whole new identity. And you know what what's funny? This is going to sound paradoxical, but what I really liked about the trailer is that I didn't really like the trailer. Like, I wasn't in love with it. It made me feel a little weird, but I love that. That's Rian Johnson. And it's also like where this saga is going to go into. It's absolutely crazy. So that's pretty much all I wanted to do for this video, guys. Like I said, a lot of coverage coming at you guys tomorrow. Going to be doing stuff with the Rebel Scum podcast, which will be awesome. Can't wait to check that out. And as I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and nerdy day. See ya!